The next question is, teaching is more effective when teacher uses. Now I am saying it's interactive, but students have doubt why it isn't demonstration. So let's say all the videos now that you have on Examrace YouTube, there are lots of demonstrations. Now these are in the form of animations, 3D models coming up. So what is there is a demonstration, but still you have joined this course. Why? Because this is an interaction. Okay, now what do you think is more effective? Definitely interaction is more effective because you can bring in your questions, we can discuss those questions, you can have a resolution to those questions and exact doubts that you are facing. When I am demonstrating, I simply bring in a thing, I demonstrate it. Okay, from my side I am completely done, but I don't know your perspective. 90% of the case you would understand, but still 10% of the case there might be a question that would come into your mind. Oh, this should happen, oh, this should not happen, oh, why this happened. Okay, but that could be resolved only if there is interaction. Definitely if you are interacting, you would raise a point to me, and when I am taking a next lecture, I will take into account that I covered those points very carefully. So what happens actually here is, teaching becomes more effective when you are using an interaction method. I hope now you have your doubt clear that why this answer is not demonstration and it is interaction. The rest two choices there was no doubt, but there was a confusion between these two choices. Yes, Bandhvi, so that's why I said demonstration you use with examples. So any of the video on YouTube Examrace now, you would have ample of animations, ample of demonstrations, ample of 3D. But still, as I said, you joined this course and that was because of the interaction. Okay, I hope that's clear. And Bandhvi has another question regarding conventional learning. So yes, conventional testing, again the same thing. You are trying to understand the testing method. Simply a pen and paper based testing method is converted into a computer based method. So rather than filling out the OMR sheets, you are now, what you are trying to do is, you are trying to mark the ABCD on the computer itself. The next question is, which of the following forms of evaluation is considered or concerned with long-term assessment? Now we have three types that are given here. Let's talk about these three types one by one. When I say process, what does process actually means? Process means I am talking about how things happen, the implementation. So let's say I am talking about process evolution in healthcare. So let's take healthcare as one of the focus and we'll discuss all the aspects based on that. So when I'm talking about healthcare, I'm talking about how the implementation goes on, how the work progresses, what time we would require maximum effectiveness and efficiency that would come in. The next is impact evaluation. What do we understand by impact evaluation? I am trying to have the immediate effect of health activities on the people who are receiving the message. So I am trying to see the immediate impact. Okay, and that's what is the impact evaluation. When I'm talking about outcome, I'm trying to see the long-term changes. What happened? Whether the things were as we decided or not. So let's say we talk about Ayushman Bharat. Now, what we are talking as of now is a process evaluation. After 2 years, we would see the impact that is coming. Oh, really? Okay, 200 people, 5,000 people went through the surgery process or whatsoever the number is. So that's the impact. And long term is definitely the quality of life for a common man has improved. So that's a kind of long term assessment that we are talking about. So when we are talking about long term assessment, it is outcome oriented. So our outcome is better health, better longevity, better life expectancy in order to have more productive years of life or more working years that could be there. Clear? The next question is, now this is a very interesting question. December 2018 only this was a question. Huge, tall, sharp and thin. Now a lot of you had a doubt, none of those are related. Now how would I say one is different? But definitely when I am saying huge, I am saying tall, I am saying thin, I am talking about the dimensions. It could be tall, it could be thin. Okay, it could be vertical dimension, it could be horizontal dimension, it could be any aspect of dimension that I am taking into account. But when I am saying sharp, it is none of the dimensions, so that's not part of this. Okay, I hope so far no doubts. Okay, great. The next question is, we have, now this is a DI question. I have taken only one of the DI questions for this class. We would be covering more because this class was focused with square of opposition, so I have just taken one of those so that it does not become a burden towards the end. Now here we have two graphs that are given. One of the graphs talks about the expenses, the other talks about saving as percentage of expense. Now we have the question, the expense on the rent as a percent of income is 12.5. Then the other expenses as a percentage of saving. So other expense as a percentage of saving into 100 is what we have to find out. Now I have the expense of F, which is 140. So I have expense of F, which is 140, and percentage saving as percentage of expense is 14.28. Now how do I calculate? P is equal to savings by expenditure into 100. So that is this percentage. Percentage of savings by expenditure into 100. Okay. So what is the savings? Savings is unknown. S I have to calculate. So it's P into E divided by 100. So what is P? P is 140. Okay, into 14.28 divided by 100. Okay, so that's how we calculate S. Okay, now since I have the savings, now let's say whatever my savings comes to, let's assume I solve this and my savings comes out to somewhere around 160. Okay, or let's say my saving comes out to be not 160, won't be possible, so it would be 14 whatsoever the number is. Let me move on. Okay, so you have P that comes in as 20. Okay, so this value comes out as 20. Okay, now this saving comes out as 20. So what would be the total income? Total income would be expense plus saving. So it's 140 plus 20. Total income is 160. Okay, of this 160, how much is spent on rent is 12.5%. So 160, I find out 12.5%. Okay, now when I calculate 12.5% of 160, let's say it's again comes out to 20. Now when it comes out to 20 is my expense on rent. My total expense is 140. What is the expense on another things would be 120. That is 140 minus 20. So it's 120. And what is the saving is 160. Sorry, the saving was how much? The saving was 20. So 120 divided by 20 into 100 would be my answer. I hope that's clear. I hope that's clear. Any doubts for this question? Okay, I'm just waiting if you have doubts for this question. Okay, this is one of the questions from doorstep only, Bandhvi. I am just putting up the values, but if you get an idea, you can just check that out carefully. You can change the resolution later on to 720 and see those graphs. The value for the F is 140 in the first graph that you have to use, and the value for the F in the second graph is 14.28, which is saving as a percentage of expense that you have to use. Okay. So once you are using this, you would be able to solve this question. Mahalakshmi has a question about what is snowball sampling. Okay, snowball sampling is a kind of referral group. So might be you have heard about vertical marketing. So it's something like that. So let's say I need to select 10 students from this class who are doing very good. Okay, so what I do is I go and select Mahalakshmi. Now I ask Mahalakshmi select another candidate. She asks the next candidate to select another candidate, and this is a kind of chain that goes on, and that is what is a snowball. So one piece of snow and the next comes and keeps on accumulating next to it. Okay, I hope that's clear. And accidental sampling is just by a chance that this was selected. I hope, Mahalakshmi, that's clear. Okay, so both the TI questions and this question is clear. The next question talks about the biodiversity. Now you have beta, gamma and alpha biodiversity. Let's understand the terms first. So we have three types of biodiversity, and these are the Greek letters alpha, beta and gamma. So when I say alpha diversity, I am trying to understand the diversity among the organisms which are sharing the same community. So within the same community or the same habitat, what kind of diversity exists is the alpha diversity. When I say beta diversity, it's a diversity along a latitude or a longitudinal dimension. So changing with east-west or changing with north-south is what is beta diversity, simply put. Gamma diversity is the diversity of habitat over a given geographical area. So given geographical area is this. On this region, what is the changes in the patterns of livelihood that is seen? Great. The next question talks about which is known as a physiographic factors. Now whenever we talk about environment gets affected by four factors as mentioned in the choices. So all of those factors: climate, living organisms, edaphic means the soil characteristics, and topographical means the relief features. So it could be mountains, lakes, plateaus, height, sea level. So all those are topographic features. So physiographic features are also called as topographic features. But when I say factors that affect environment, you have climate, biotic, edaphic or topographic factors that affect the environment. The next question is regarding Paris Agreement. Now here, what we are trying to understand is Paris Agreement is important in terms that we are trying to we are trying to understand that it's a framework for monitoring and climate change. India is a member to it, so fourth statement is incorrect. It talks about the negative impacts that climate change is having onto us. We are also trying to curb the amount of pollution into the atmosphere. It was adopted by 195 nations in the year 2015, not 2012. So the first statement is incorrect. So first and fourth statements are incorrect. The rest three are correct statements. Now similar to the Paris Climate Change Agreement, this time what is very, very important is the UN Summit on Desertification. Recently you have the BRICS Summit. Prime Minister is part of the summit at Brazil, so that's again very, very important. So any change related to desertification this time is very, very important. And then you have SDG 6 that were discussed in detail this time. We have been covering all the important questions for education, environment and computers in the upcoming lectures on YouTube. So starting 20th November we would be having a series of expected questions, so don't miss those. Those are really, really important for your examination this time, and also cover the expected questions that we have already taken for 2017 and 18. Now the next is the first important step in teaching is, now let's say you all are students here. When you all are students here, what I need to know is background, whether you are bachelor's, master's or you are just 8th pass. Now if you are just a 8th student, I am teaching syllogism, I am teaching square of opposition, definitely this is something that's difficult. If you do not have background in, let's say, mathematics, and I take DI in just 5 minutes and wind it off, considering that this is a very easy section, you must be familiar, then it's my fault. Okay, so it's very, very important to understand the background. I understand since you are appearing for your NTA examination, most of you are from social sciences background, having difficulty in the sections on reasoning So DI is something that we have to take into account closely, and therefore I need to know the background of the students. I hope you understand. So a lot of you had a question why background of the student is important. It's much more important about planning and organizing the content, because as a teacher you have to have a firm idea about the content. So that's important, but the most important is knowing the background, because if I don't know the background, my content and my planning would not be apt. I hope that makes it clear. Okay, now the last section and the most interesting section. This question was brought up by Jasleen. Really good question. So I'll devote next 5 to 10 minutes on this question. Now first, I want you to go back and watch the 4 videos in syllogism that we have taken, the 2 videos on square of opposition, and 1 video on mood and figure, and 1 video on logic. Okay, so that's what you have to go back and watch on YouTube. Now here, when we are talking about starting from the square of opposition, I'll just do a quick recap. A, E, I and O. So you have universals on the top, particulars on the bottom, affirmatives on this side and negatives on this side. So this is universal, this is particular, this is affirmative, and this is negative. Okay, now mood and figure. When I say all dogs are cats, all cats are cows. Okay, so this is P, M, M and S arrangement. So that is which arrangement? This is the 4th arrangement that I have drawn. Okay, so similarly there could be a case where I say all dogs are all cats are dogs and all cows are what is the middle term? Cats. Okay, so M is the middle term, P is the major premise term, and S is the subject or the second premise term. Okay, so there could be 4 such arrangements as seen in the diagram. Now, since A could be on 4 positions, here, A means affirmative. Okay, so A could be on these 4 locations, E could be on any of these 4 locations, I could be on any of these 4 locations, and O could be on any of those 4 locations. So what could be the possible combinations? Would be 4 into 4 into 4, that is 64 different ways under which I can solve this. Now for each of these 64, listen carefully, each of these 64, there could be 4 mood forms and figure forms. So based on these moods, so these are moods, the first mood, second mood, third mood and the fourth mood, and the first figure, second figure, third figure and the fourth figure. When I draw the figures, it's something like that. In the first case, I would have the middle term and the major term, then I would have the second term and the middle term. Okay, so I would have 4 combinations. So this 64, each of the term would have 4 combinations, so 64 into 4. So 256 forms of syllogism are possible. Listen carefully. But of these 256 forms of syllogism, only and only 19 forms are valid forms. Okay. Now what is valid? Valid means, simply put, that if the premises are true, the conclusions would be true. If both the premises are true, the conclusion would be true, and that is a valid form. So of these 256, only 19 are valid. And what are those valid is the list that is given here in the table. Now what you have to do is memorize this list. We had one of the questions at doorstep where you had, let's say, AAA. What is the cute name for it or the other name for it? So it is Barbara. Similarly, EAE is Chilantrate. And so on. So what you have to do is, for the first form you have 4 valid figures, for the second form you have 4 valid figures, for the fourth form there are 5 valid figures, and for the third figure there are 6 valid forms that are seen. So you need to know these and you need to memorize this. So you can simply take a snapshot of this, memorize these very carefully, because this is something that you have to memorize. And Jasleen, this was a very good question that was brought about by you. So definitely others also who have not come across these kind of questions, there could be a very direct question, OAO, what is the other name for it? So it is Bocardo. So that's what you have to memorize, and here I have the list what you would have to memorize. Now these are some of the most important ones because these are the valid forms, otherwise you have names for all the 256, but no need to go into that detail. That is what you have to memorize. Okay, so that was the first session that we covered for the syllogism, square of opposition mainly. The next class we would be meeting again on Friday 8 a.m. probably the same time. If there is any change, I'll intimate through the email. But in the next class we would be discussing more questions from analytical and DI section, and also looking forward for more doubts to come in so that we have much more discussions in the next class. I understand those who are not able to join for now can watch the recorded session later on, so you would have access to watch that later on. Have a wonderful day ahead. Good luck.